In the far reaches of space, far beyond the comfort and safety of Earth, human colonies had been slowly expanding. These colonies were built on distant planets, moons, and even massive space stations, each one a testament to human ingenuity and determination. The people who lived there were pioneers in the truest sense. They faced challenges that no one on Earth could even imagine: hostile climates, lack of familiar resources, and the constant threat of unknown dangers lurking in the vast, empty stretches of space. Despite all this, humanity thrived, building communities, schools, industries, and defense outposts. People believed in the future, in the promise of reaching the stars and securing a place for humanity among the many civilizations of the galaxy. However, not everyone in the galaxy welcomed humans with open arms. As humans spread their presence, they inevitably came into contact with alien civilizations, some friendly and curious, others suspicious and aggressive. Over time, tensions grew. Reports of skirmishes, raids, and unexplained disappearances began to circulate. Some alien factions saw human expansion as a threat, a challenge to their control of certain star systems. Others simply underestimated humanity, assuming that humans were primitive compared to their advanced technology. Yet humans had one thing that could never be measured by technology alone: their courage, their resourcefulness, and their ability to unite in the face of danger. In this tense environment, the United Earth Defense Force, humanity's primary military organization responsible for protecting human colonies, was constantly on alert. Every day, patrols scanned the darkness of space for signs of alien activity. Intelligence officers analyzed intercepted communications and mapped potential threats. The political leaders of the colonies were in constant communication, worried about protecting civilians and maintaining morale. No one could predict exactly when a full-scale confrontation might occur, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time. Among the many vessels in the human fleet, one warship stood out for its size, strength, and the skill of its crew. This was the Valiant, a state-of-the-art human warship designed for long-range missions and large-scale battles. The Valiant was not only equipped with the latest weapons technology, but also with advanced shielding systems, highly intelligent navigation software, and experimental combat strategies developed over decades. It was a symbol of human determination and technological achievement, a vessel built not just to fight but to inspire hope in humanity's ability to survive and thrive. The crew of the Valiant was composed of the finest individuals from all over the human colonies. Every officer, pilot, engineer, and technician had been carefully selected for their skill, experience, and dedication. They had trained together for years, running through countless simulations, learning how to respond to every conceivable scenario in space combat. Yet no amount of training could fully prepare them for the real thing: the chaos, fear, and uncertainty of facing a powerful alien fleet in the cold void of space. Each member of the crew understood the risks, and each had made a silent promise to themselves and to humanity that they would not fail. The day that the Valiant was finally ordered to prepare for battle was unlike any other. There was a mixture of tension and quiet determination aboard the ship. In the command center, officers studied holographic maps of the surrounding space, highlighting potential enemy positions and calculating possible outcomes of engagement. Every decision was critical. Every choice could determine the fate of thousands of human lives across the colonies. Outside the ship, the blackness of space stretched endlessly, filled with distant stars that twinkled like distant beacons of hope. The calm beauty of the cosmos contrasted sharply with the fear and anticipation building inside the warship. Civilians across the human colonies were also aware of the danger. Messages from leaders warned them to stay alert, to follow safety protocols, and to remain calm. But fear was inevitable. Parents worried about their children. Friends worried about friends, and entire communities felt the tension as they awaited news of the coming battle. Communication networks buzzed with rumors, some exaggerated, some accurate, but all contributing to a sense of urgency and unease. Humanity had faced challenges before, but this was different. The threat was immediate, massive, and unlike anything they had encountered. Within the crew of the Valiant, there was also a deep sense of camaraderie and trust. They knew that survival depended not only on technology but on teamwork. The captain, a seasoned officer with years of experience in high-pressure situations, addressed the crew personally before they left for the battlefield. His words were simple but powerful. We are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for every human life, for every colony, for the future of humanity. Trust each other. Trust yourselves. Stay calm, stay focused, and we will overcome this together. These words resonated with everyone on board, reinforcing the sense of purpose that had brought them together. As the Valiant moved closer to the region of space where the alien forces were expected, the tension aboard the ship grew. Every crew member performed their duties with precision, running checks on weapons, shields, engines, and communications. The ship itself seemed almost alive, responding to the crew's commands with perfect synchronization. There was an unspoken understanding among the crew that this mission would test them in ways that no training could. Yet, despite the fear, there was also excitement, a sense of honor in being part of humanity's defense at such a crucial moment. The vastness of space added to the tension. Unlike battles on a planet where terrain and environment play a role, space offered no cover, no safe place to hide. Every decision, every maneuver, every calculation had to be precise. One misstep could result in disaster. The crew was acutely aware that they were humanity's first line of defense against a potentially unstoppable alien force. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but it was also motivating. They were not just fighting a battle. They were representing the hopes, dreams, and survival of an entire species. Despite the fear and uncertainty, there were small moments of human connection that kept the crew grounded. Pilots joked quietly with engineers while performing checks. Officers shared stories of past missions, and technicians encouraged each other as they worked tirelessly to ensure every system was functioning perfectly. These moments reminded them that they were not alone, that they were part of a team bound together by trust, skill, and a shared mission. In the midst of approaching war, humanity's spirit and resilience shone brightly. Finally, the Valiant approached the frontier where the alien fleet had been detected. The blackness of space seemed to grow heavier, as if it were holding its breath in anticipation of the coming conflict. The crew could see faint signals and movement in the distance. The alien forces were close, and soon, the first shots would be fired. The calm before the storm was almost unbearable, filled with tension, anticipation, and the knowledge that everything would change in the next moments. Every crew member steeled themselves, focusing on their training, their skills, and the mission that lay ahead. In that moment, humanity's determination became tangible. The Valiant was not just a ship, it was a symbol. It represented the ingenuity, courage, and perseverance of an entire species. The crew, though aware of the risks, were ready to face the unknown. They knew that the coming battle could define humanity's place in the galaxy, that it could determine whether human colonies survived or were destroyed. And yet, despite the fear, they were resolute. They were ready to step into the darkness, to confront the unknown, and to fight with everything they had to protect the future of humanity. As the Valiant drifted closer to the battlefield, the stars stretched endlessly around it, silent witnesses to the bravery and determination of the humans aboard. Every heartbeat, every command, every action was part of a larger story, a story of survival, courage, and the unyielding spirit of a species determined to endure. The calm before the storm was over, and humanity's first true test in this conflict was about to begin. And in that quiet moment, before the first shots were fired, one thing was clear. Humanity was not going to surrender. They would fight, they would survive, and they would triumph. The Valiant and her crew were ready, and with them, the hope of every human colony in the galaxy shone brighter than the stars themselves. The moment the human colonies had feared for so long was finally upon them. Reports of alien skirmishes had grown more frequent, and it became clear that this was no longer a series of minor conflicts. It was the beginning of a full-scale confrontation. Small human patrols, tasked with monitoring the borders of human-controlled space, had already encountered enemy forces. These skirmishes were intense and terrifying, even though the humans had the advantage of preparation. The aliens moved with a strange, almost mechanical precision, their weapons unlike anything humans had seen before. Their ships were faster, more agile, and equipped with firepower that could destroy a human patrol in seconds. The initial clashes left human forces scrambling, and even the most experienced commanders were forced to rethink their strategies. Amid this chaos, news traveled quickly between colonies. Families huddled together, listening to the faint broadcasts that described human ships being overwhelmed, some even destroyed. Panic began to creep into the hearts of civilians, and rumors of impending doom spread faster than official messages could reassure them. Every report carried a heavy weight. Human lives were at stake, entire colonies could be threatened, and the survival of humanity as a whole seemed uncertain. But in the midst of fear, there was also hope. Humanity had faced crises before and had always found a way to survive. This hope was what kept people alert, what kept them believing that a solution could be found, even against an enemy that appeared overwhelmingly powerful. In the midst of this uncertainty, the Valiant received its orders. The human military command had monitored the alien movements carefully and had determined that the main alien fleet was massing in a nearby sector. This fleet was unlike anything humans had ever encountered, a massive armada with hundreds of ships all coordinated with frightening precision. Intelligence suggested that the aliens were planning a decisive strike against human colonies. The situation was critical, and humanity's survival depended on a swift, calculated response. The Valiant was given the mission to intercept this fleet and disrupt their plans before they could reach the colonies. It was a task that seemed almost impossible, but the warship and its crew were humanity's best hope. The journey to the battlefield was tense and filled with anticipation. Every crew member was aware of the stakes. Pilots checked their controls repeatedly. Engineers ran final systems diagnostics, and communication officers ensured that every channel was clear and ready. The ship itself responded perfectly, a finely tuned machine designed for efficiency and precision. Even the slightest mistake could be catastrophic, but the crew's rigorous training had prepared them for this moment. They moved with coordination that came from years of experience and trust in one another. There was no room for hesitation, no place for fear to take over, only focus and determination. As the Valiant approached the location of the alien fleet, the crew began to see the scale of the enemy. The alien ships stretched across the darkness of space, vast in number and menacing in design. Each ship seemed almost alive, moving with synchronization that suggested a collective intelligence guiding them. For a moment, even the bravest among the human crew felt the weight of the challenge ahead. They realized that this was not just a battle of weapons and technology. It was a test of courage, strategy, and humanity's ability to stand against overwhelming odds. Yet even in the face of such a formidable enemy, the crew's determination did not waver. They knew that they had been chosen for this mission because they were capable, because they were the ones humanity could rely on. The first contact between human and alien forces was sudden and violent. Small human patrols that had arrived earlier were already engaged, their ships firing desperately to fend off alien attacks. The aliens' weapons were precise and deadly, capable of destroying human ships in seconds. Yet the humans fought with determination, using every tactic they had learned. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as ships maneuvered and dodged, firing in response to the alien assault. Each encounter was chaotic, a whirlwind of lights, energy, and strategy. Crew members on both sides of the human ships worked frantically, coordinating attacks, repairing damage, and communicating positions. It was a high-stakes game of survival, where every decision could mean life or death. For the civilians watching from afar, the situation was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Messages from the battlefield reached the colonies intermittently, describing daring maneuvers and desperate defenses. Parents clutched their children, and friends held each other tightly as each broadcast reminded them of the danger. Yet even in fear there was admiration. People could see humanity's determination reflected in the courage of these brave men and women aboard the ships. The knowledge that someone was actively fighting to protect them gave them hope, and hope in these times was a powerful force. As the Valiant closed in on the main alien fleet, the crew began to implement the strategies they had meticulously planned. They analyzed the enemy formations, looking for weaknesses and openings. The aliens, confident in their overwhelming numbers, did not initially perceive the humans as a serious threat. They assumed that a single warship, even as advanced as the Valiant, could not alter the course of the battle. This misjudgment would prove to be a critical error. The humans had prepared for this moment, and they were ready to exploit every opportunity. Every maneuver, every shot fired was calculated to maximize impact and disrupt the alien forces. During the engagement, the human fleet, although smaller in number, relied on agility, precision, and teamwork. The Valiant moved through the battlefield like a predator, striking at key targets with devastating accuracy. The crew coordinated flawlessly, their training and trust in each other allowing them to act with speed and decisiveness. Alien ships that were previously confident began to falter, caught off guard by the humans' tactics. Communication across the Valiant was constant. Pilots reported enemy positions, engineers recalibrated weapons in real time, and officers made split-second decisions to counter unexpected maneuvers. It was a dance of strategy and survival, where the smallest misstep could be fatal. The aliens, once so confident, began to realize that they were facing a serious adversary. The humans were not merely defending themselves, they were actively challenging the alien fleet, disrupting formations, and inflicting significant damage. Messages intercepted by human intelligence revealed confusion and panic among the alien commanders. Their assumptions about human weakness had been shattered, replaced by the grim realization that this single warship, supported by its crew, was capable of extraordinary feats. This shift in perception was crucial. In battle, confidence is as important as firepower, and the humans had begun to turn the tide simply by demonstrating that they would not be easily defeated. As the battle raged, the crew of the Valiant drew on every ounce of skill, courage, and determination. Each member understood that this was a defining moment, that their actions could determine the fate of thousands of human lives. The adrenaline of combat, combined with years of preparation, allowed them to operate at the peak of their abilities. Every shot fired, every maneuver executed, and every command given was part of a larger plan to disrupt, weaken, and ultimately defeat the alien threat. Despite the chaos surrounding them, the crew remained focused, their minds sharp and their spirits unyielding. Amid the fighting, small victories began to accumulate. Alien ships were disabled, critical systems malfunctioned, and the once confident fleet began to show signs of disarray. These moments, though brief, were significant. They demonstrated that humanity could fight effectively, even against a technologically superior enemy. They inspired not only the crew aboard the Valiant, but also human forces across the sector. News of these victories spread, giving hope to colonies and reminding them that they were not helpless, that human courage and ingenuity could still prevail in the face of overwhelming odds. Throughout the engagement, the human crew also faced moments of fear and doubt. There were times when damage reports arrived, warning of systems failing, shields weakening, or weapons malfunctioning. There were moments when the odds seemed insurmountable, when the alien numbers and firepower appeared too great. Yet in each of these moments, the crew relied on their training, their teamwork, and their unwavering belief in their mission. They adapted, improvised, and continued to fight, turning potential disaster into opportunity. Every challenge overcame strengthened their resolve and brought them closer to the goal of victory. By the time the Valiant had fully engaged the main alien fleet, the human forces had already proven their resilience. Smaller skirmishes, earlier patrols, and strategic maneuvers had disrupted the enemy enough to set the stage for the decisive action that would follow. The aliens, who had once seen humanity as a minor nuisance, now faced a threat they could not ignore. The balance of power had begun to shift, and the humans' courage, skill, and determination were becoming increasingly evident. It was a turning point, not yet the final battle, but a critical moment where the tide of conflict began to favor humanity. Amid the chaos, the crew of the Valiant also experienced moments of reflection. They thought of the families and colonies depending on them, of the sacrifices that had brought them to this point, and of the responsibility they carried as representatives of all humanity. Each crew member understood that their actions were not just about survival, they were about protecting a species, a civilization, and the hope of countless lives. This awareness added purpose to every decision, every maneuver, and every act of bravery. They were not just soldiers, they were humanity's guardians in the vast and unforgiving theater of space. As the engagement drew on, it became clear that the humans' efforts were not in vain. Alien forces, though still dangerous, were beginning to falter under the coordinated attacks, precise maneuvers, and relentless courage of the human crew. The Valiant had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and tactical brilliance. Every success, no matter how small, strengthened the morale of the crew and the confidence of human forces across the galaxy. The realization that humans could stand against overwhelming odds inspired both awe and determination. The first stage of the battle, characterized by skirmishes and early engagements, ended with a mixture of exhaustion and cautious optimism. The humans had survived, had inflicted damage, and had demonstrated that even against a vastly superior alien fleet, they could fight effectively. Civilians and military personnel alike began to see the possibility of victory. Understanding that the outcome of this conflict was not predetermined, humanity had entered the fray, and with courage, strategy, and unity, they had begun to turn the tide of war in their favor. The events of this stage of the battle were significant, not only for the immediate outcomes but for the lessons they taught. The humans learned the importance of preparation, teamwork, and adaptability. They realized that fear could be managed, that courage could be summoned even in the face of overwhelming odds, and that determination could change the course of events. These lessons would guide the crew of the Valiant in the decisive actions to come, preparing them for the moments that would define the fate of humanity in the battles ahead. By the time the Valiant moved closer to the heart of the alien fleet, humanity's position had shifted. No longer were they merely defenders reacting to alien aggression. They were now active participants in shaping the course of the battle. The first clashes had tested them, revealed their strengths, and exposed weaknesses that could be corrected. The crew, battle-hardened and focused, prepared for the next stage, knowing that the coming moments would demand every ounce of skill, courage, and ingenuity they possessed. Humanity's fight had truly begun, and the story of the Valiant and her crew was just starting to unfold. The battle had reached a stage where every move, every decision, and every action could determine the fate of entire human colonies. The initial skirmishes had taught the crew of the Valiant valuable lessons about the alien fleet's tactics, their speed, and their precision. The humans had observed patterns, weaknesses, and tendencies that could be exploited, and now it was time to take the fight to the enemy in a more direct, aggressive way. The crew understood that this was not just about survival anymore. It was about turning the tide and proving that humanity, against all odds, could strike back with purpose, skill, and determination. The Valiant moved with precision through the darkness of space, its engines humming quietly, almost imperceptibly, as the crew prepared for coordinated attacks. The ship had been designed not only for defense but for offensive maneuvers, allowing it to strike at key targets in the alien fleet with devastating efficiency. Every weapon system was checked, calibrated, and aligned. The pilots reviewed their flight patterns, strategists calculated trajectories, and communication officers coordinated signals with smaller human ships scattered across the battlefield. Every detail mattered. There was no margin for error, and the crew knew it. When the first salvo of human attacks was launched, the alien fleet reacted with confidence. They had faced smaller human ships before and had easily overpowered them. But the Valiant was different. Its attacks were precise, coordinated, and unpredictable. Alien ships, which had previously advanced in rigid formations, were now forced to scatter, dodge, and regroup under pressure. The humans exploited every opening, targeting weak points in shields, propulsion systems, and communication networks. Each successful strike disrupted the enemy's cohesion, creating confusion and hesitation among the alien commanders. From the command center, the captain of the Valiant observed the unfolding chaos with intense focus. He had spent years preparing for this moment, studying alien tactics, understanding their strengths and weaknesses, and developing counter-strategies. Now every plan, every calculation was being put to the test. He communicated calmly but decisively with his officers, issuing commands, adjusting maneuvers, and coordinating attacks across multiple targets. His confidence inspired the crew, even as the battle intensified and danger loomed around every corner of the ship. The aliens, meanwhile, were beginning to realize that their assumptions about human weakness were entirely wrong. They had believed that a single warship could not alter the outcome of the battle, that human technology and strategy were inferior, but the Valiant proved otherwise. Each strike demonstrated advanced human tactics, exploiting openings that the alien fleet did not even know existed. Alien vessels were disabled or destroyed one by one, their formations falling apart as confusion spread among their commanders. The sheer audacity and precision of human attacks shocked the enemy, and panic began to creep into their ranks. As the battle progressed, the human crew faced tremendous pressure. Explosions rocked the ship, Warning systems blared and critical systems were occasionally damaged. Yet the crew adapted quickly, repairing damage in real time, recalibrating weapons and rerouting power to essential systems. Their training, teamwork, and trust in one another allowed them to operate at peak efficiency, even under extreme stress. Every crew member understood the stakes, and this understanding fueled their determination to succeed. They were not just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for the survival of entire human civilizations scattered across the stars. The Valiant's attacks became increasingly daring. The pilots maneuvered through enemy lines with incredible precision, weaving between laser fire and explosions to strike at the most critical targets. Engineers coordinated with weapon officers to unleash concentrated volleys of firepower at enemy ships, disabling key vessels and forcing the aliens to adjust their strategies constantly. Every movement, every shot, and every calculation was a carefully planned step toward destabilizing the enemy fleet and creating opportunities for further attacks. The humans had turned the battlefield into a chessboard, where each piece moved with purpose and every strategy had a calculated impact. Despite the intensity of the fighting, the crew also maintained a sense of awareness beyond the immediate battle. They monitored communications from other human ships, relayed updates to colonies under threat, and ensured that civilian areas were protected as much as possible. The humans' ability to maintain focus under extreme pressure, while also considering the broader implications of their actions, set them apart from the aliens. This combination of tactical brilliance and strategic awareness allowed the humans to operate not just as a single ship, but as the spearhead of a coordinated, larger human effort across the sector. The aliens, though initially overconfident, began to recognize the humans' capabilities. Their flagship, previously considered untouchable, now faced repeated attacks from the Valiant. Alien commanders attempted to adjust their formations, deploy reinforcements, and counter the human strategies, but the humans were always one step ahead. Every adjustment by the enemy was met with a countermeasure by the Valiant. The crew anticipated movements, exploited weaknesses, and maintained pressure, gradually dismantling the enemy's confidence. The psychological impact of these actions was profound. The aliens were no longer sure of victory, and fear began to spread among their ranks. Within the human crew, the intensity of the battle brought out both individual brilliance and collective coordination. Pilots executed maneuvers that seemed impossible. Engineers worked tirelessly to keep the ship operational, and officers coordinated complex strategies in real time. Each person understood that their role was critical, and this understanding translated into flawless execution. The synergy between crew members allowed them to achieve results that were greater than the sum of their parts. In the chaos of battle, human skill, courage, and ingenuity shone brighter than any weapon or technology. As the Valiant continued to strike the alien fleet, a turning point began to emerge. Alien ships were being disabled faster than they could be replaced. Formations were breaking apart, and communication between enemy vessels was becoming erratic. Small victories accumulated into larger gains, and the humans began to see a path toward complete domination of the battlefield. Every disabled ship, every successful maneuver, and every strategic disruption weakened the enemy and bolstered the morale of the crew. It was clear that the humans, despite being outnumbered, had gained the upper hand through skill, coordination, and determination. The alien fleet, once confident and aggressive, now struggled to maintain cohesion. Their attempts to regroup were met with calculated, overwhelming human responses. The Valiant's crew had turned the tide not merely through firepower, but through superior tactics and psychological pressure. The enemy's initial advantage in numbers and technology was nullified by the humans' ability to adapt, anticipate, and act decisively. The battle had become not just a test of weapons, but a test of intelligence, strategy, and the human spirit itself. Amid the chaos, the crew also experienced moments of reflection and awareness. They understood that each victory, each maneuver, and each strike represented more than just a tactical advantage. It was a step toward protecting their families, their colonies, and humanity itself. They drew strength from this knowledge, finding courage in the idea that their actions mattered on a scale far greater than themselves. Even in the most dangerous moments, the sense of purpose kept them focused, disciplined, and relentless in their efforts. The turning tide of the battle had another important effect. It inspired other human forces across the sector. As news of the Valiant's success spread through communications, smaller human units gained confidence and resolved to act with greater courage. The impact of a single, well-coordinated warship had a ripple effect, demonstrating that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity could fight back effectively. This inspiration extended beyond the battlefield, giving hope to civilians and reinforcing the idea that humanity was capable of defending itself and surviving against a superior enemy. Throughout the engagement, the Valiant's crew also relied heavily on intuition and adaptability. The aliens often attempted unpredictable maneuvers to regain the advantage, but the humans were quick to respond. Decisions that would normally take hours of planning were made in moments, relying on instinct, experience, and trust in one another. This ability to adapt on the fly made the humans even more formidable, as the aliens struggled to anticipate their next move. The battlefield had become a dynamic, constantly shifting environment where only skill, courage, and quick thinking could ensure survival. As the battle drew on, the alien fleet began to show signs of fatigue and disorganization. Ships were damaged, communication networks were disrupted, and morale among alien crews was declining. The humans had turned the initial defensive stage of the engagement into an opportunity for offense, gaining momentum and creating openings for decisive actions. The crew of the Valiant, aware of this shift, continued to press the advantage, exploiting weaknesses and coordinating attacks with precision. Each action brought them closer to the ultimate goal, breaking the alien fleet's cohesion entirely. By the end of this stage, it was clear that the humans had achieved something remarkable. They had not only survived the initial confrontations but had actively challenged the alien forces, disrupting their formations and inflicting significant damage. The aliens, who had expected an easy victory, were forced to rethink their strategy, now facing a determined and highly capable human adversary. The humans, though exhausted and battered, had proven that courage, skill, and coordination could level the playing field even against overwhelming odds. The experience of this part of the battle had lasting effects on the crew. They had learned the importance of timing, coordination, and maintaining morale under extreme pressure. They had experienced firsthand the impact of determination, focus, and adaptability in combat. These lessons would carry them through the next stages of the conflict, preparing them for the decisive moments to come. The Valiant and her crew had become more than just a warship and its crew. They had become a symbol of human ingenuity, resilience, and the unyielding will to survive. By the time the Valiant prepared for the next phase of engagement, the human crew understood the scale of what they had achieved. They had transformed fear into action, uncertainty into strategy, and overwhelming odds into an opportunity for triumph. The first major confrontations had tested them, taught them, and strengthened them. Now, with the alien fleet beginning to falter, humanity's path toward victory was becoming clearer. The crew, battle-hardened and resolute, was ready to continue, knowing that the next steps would bring them closer to ultimate triumph. The battlefield stretched endlessly before the Valiant, a vast expanse of darkness punctuated by distant stars and the flashing lights of ships in combat. The alien fleet, once confident and unyielding, was beginning to falter. The human crew had pushed them to their limits, exploiting every weakness and executing attacks with perfect precision. The moment of decisive action had arrived. The tension inside the Valiant was almost unbearable. Every crew member knew that this phase of the battle could determine the fate of not only the colonies, but the entire human species. There was no room for error, no possibility of retreat. Humanity's destiny rested on their shoulders, and the weight of that responsibility was both terrifying and exhilarating. The captain, a seasoned officer who had faced countless simulations but never anything quite like this, gave his orders calmly but with absolute authority. "Target the flagship," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. "Everything we've prepared, everything we've learned leads to this moment. Precision, coordination, timing. We end this now." The crew understood immediately. The flagship was the heart of the alien fleet, the command center from which all movements were coordinated. Destroying it would throw the entire alien force into chaos, crippling their ability to fight effectively. But reaching it would not be easy. It was heavily guarded, shielded by layers of defensive ships, and the aliens would not give up without a fight. The Valiant began its approach, maneuvering with calculated precision through the chaos of battle. Alien ships attempted to intercept them, firing relentlessly, but the human crew was prepared. Pilots weaved through the laser fire, engines thrumming as the ship executed maneuvers that seemed almost impossible. Weapons officers launched precise volleys at key targets, disabling escort ships and clearing a path toward the flagship. Engineers worked tirelessly to maintain shields and power systems, ensuring that the ship remained operational even as explosions rocked its hull. Every move was synchronized, every action calculated, and every person focused on the singular goal of reaching the enemy command ship. As they closed in, the crew saw the true scale of the alien flagship. It was enormous, a floating fortress bristling with weapons, shields, and defensive systems. Its design was alien in every sense, built for both offense and intimidation. But the humans were undaunted. Years of preparation, training, and strategy had led to this moment. Every system on the Valiant was at peak readiness, every crew member alert and focused. There was an unspoken understanding among them that this battle would not just be won by firepower alone. It would be won by courage, skill, and the unyielding will to succeed. The first volley of attacks against the flagship was met with fierce resistance. Alien weapons fired with deadly accuracy, and the Valiant shook under the impact. Alarms blared, warning lights flashed, and the ship's corridors vibrated with the force of each strike. The crew responded immediately. Pilots adjusted flight paths. Engineers rerouted power to reinforce shields, and weapons officers recalibrated cannons to target weak points in the alien defenses. The tension was almost unbearable, but the humans were focused, moving with precision and determination. Every action mattered, and every decision could mean the difference between victory and destruction. The battle intensified as the Valiant drew closer. Alien ships surrounding the flagship attempted to form a protective barrier, but the humans anticipated this. They executed complex maneuvers, striking at the escorts from multiple angles and using their superior tactics to break through the lines. Explosions lit up the darkness, illuminating the chaos of battle as ships were disabled. Shields collapsed and systems failed. Each victory was a step closer to the flagship, each maneuver a testament to the crew's skill and coordination. The humans were not just attacking, they were dismantling the enemy's ability to fight, one calculated strike at a time. Inside the flagship, alien commanders were beginning to panic. Their confidence, once unshakable, was eroding with every human maneuver. Communications were disrupted, systems were failing, and the coordinated structure of the fleet was unraveling. The humans, operating with precision and adaptability, had gained the upper hand. What the aliens had assumed would be a quick victory was turning into a disaster. Their numbers and technology were formidable, but they had underestimated the ingenuity, courage, and determination of the humans. The balance of power was shifting rapidly, and the flagship was now vulnerable. As the Valiant prepared for the final strike, the tension aboard the ship was palpable. Every crew member held their breath, knowing that the next actions would determine the outcome of the battle. Pilots positioned the ship for an optimal angle of attack. Weapons officers locked onto critical points in the flagship's defenses, and engineers made final adjustments to ensure that power systems could handle the immense energy required for the assault. The captain issued one final order, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "This is our moment. Execute the plan. For humanity." The Valiant unleashed a barrage of firepower, targeting the flagship's command systems with incredible precision. Energy beams struck shields at calculated points, exploiting weaknesses while missiles and projectiles disabled defensive turrets and engines. The alien flagship shuddered under the assault, shields flickering and failing in sections, systems sparking and malfunctioning. The crew of the Valiant worked in perfect harmony, adjusting tactics in real time to counter the enemy's attempts at defense. Every second was critical, every strike deliberate, and every maneuver executed with focus and determination. As the flagship systems began to fail, chaos spread through the alien fleet. Ships without orders collided, formations broke apart, and panic took hold among alien crews. The Valiant pressed the advantage, targeting key vessels and disabling them before they could regroup. The psychological impact of this relentless assault was immense. Alien commanders realized that their fleet was no longer in control, that the humans had seized the initiative and were dictating the flow of battle. Fear and confusion replaced confidence and aggression, and the once mighty armada began to crumble under pressure. Inside the Valiant, The crew felt a mixture of adrenaline, relief, and determination. They were still in the midst of battle and danger was ever present, but the progress they had made was undeniable. Each successful strike reinforced their confidence, and the realization that victory was within reach fueled their efforts. The crew's cohesion, training, and courage allowed them to maintain focus even in the most chaotic moments. They understood that they were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting to secure humanity's future, to protect lives and to make a decisive statement that humans could not be underestimated. The alien flagship, now critically damaged, attempted a final desperate maneuver. It fired all remaining weapons at the Valiant, hoping to destroy the human warship before it could deliver the decisive blow. The Valiant dodged, weaved, and countered with precision, absorbing some hits while neutralizing others with rapid-fire weapons. The battle reached its peak intensity, a deadly dance between two forces locked in a life-or-death struggle. Every member of the crew was pushed to their limits, relying on training, instinct, and trust in one another to survive and succeed. Finally, after moments that seemed to stretch into eternity, the Valiant struck the flagship's core systems. A massive explosion erupted within the alien command ship, disabling its power, communication, and navigation systems. The flagship shuddered and then went silent, floating helplessly among the debris of its own defenses. The collapse of the flagship sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. Without leadership and coordination, the remaining alien ships scattered, some retreating, others disabled by continued human attacks. The battlefield, once filled with chaos and fire, began to grow quiet. The humans had achieved what many thought impossible. They had dismantled the heart of the enemy fleet. Silence fell across the battlefield. For the first time in hours, there was a moment of stillness, a pause in which the enormity of what had just occurred became clear. The Valiant remained intact, its crew exhausted but victorious. The alien fleet, once so confident and overwhelming, had been shattered by the skill, courage, and determination of the humans. The victory was not just tactical, it was symbolic. Humanity had proven that even against overwhelming odds they could fight effectively, adapt to challenges, and emerge victorious. The battle was over, and the silence that followed was a testament to the triumph of strategy, teamwork, and the human spirit. As the crew of the Valiant surveyed the battlefield, the reality of their achievement began to sink in. They had faced a powerful enemy, navigated unimaginable danger, and executed a plan with near-perfect precision. They had turned fear into action, chaos into order, and uncertainty into victory. The humans' courage and skill had not only saved lives but had demonstrated to the galaxy that humanity could stand its ground, even in the face of superior technology and overwhelming numbers. This moment would be remembered for generations, a defining point in human history where determination and unity triumphed over fear and adversity. In the aftermath, the crew reflected on the personal and collective sacrifices that had brought them to this moment. They thought of the colonies they had protected, the families relying on their courage, and the countless lives saved by their actions. Each member of the crew understood that they were part of something larger than themselves, that their bravery and skill had secured not only a battlefield victory, but a lasting legacy for humanity. The Valiant had become more than a warship. It had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of the human spirit. As the ship began to return to human-controlled space, the crew remained vigilant. Though the flagship was destroyed and the alien fleet scattered, they knew that humanity's challenges were not over. There would be other battles, other threats, and other tests of courage and skill. But the success of this mission had demonstrated what humans could achieve when united, focused, and determined. The Valiant had shown that fear could be overcome, that courage could prevail, and that even the most impossible odds could be challenged with strategy, skill, and determination. The silence that fell after the battle was not merely the absence of conflict. It was the triumph of humanity's courage, intelligence, and unity. The Valiant had entered the battlefield, faced an overwhelming enemy, and emerged victorious. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing tall against adversity, and the lessons of this battle would echo across colonies, fleets, and generations. It was a defining moment, a climax of bravery and strategy, and a story that would be remembered as the moment when humanity refused to yield and triumphed against all odds. The battle had ended, and the darkness of space that had once been filled with fire, chaos, and destruction was now quiet. The alien fleet, once so menacing, had been shattered. The human warship Valiant floated among the debris of what had been one of the most intense conflicts in human history. Inside the ship, the crew was exhausted. Muscles ached, minds raced from adrenaline, and every individual felt the weight of what they had achieved. Yet there was no time for complacency. Even in victory, the crew knew that survival required vigilance. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's future was ongoing. As the Valiant began its slow return to human-controlled space, communication channels opened with the colonies. Messages of hope and relief spread rapidly. Families who had feared the worst were informed that the worst had been averted, that the human fleet had triumphed, and that their homes and communities were safe, for now. Across the colonies, people rejoiced quietly, hugging each other, sending messages of gratitude, and sharing the news that humanity had prevailed. For many, the sight of the Valiant's crew emerging victorious from what seemed like an impossible battle became a symbol of courage, hope, and resilience. The crew, however, was not solely focused on celebration. There was a profound sense of reflection, a recognition of what had been at stake and what had been sacrificed. They thought of the ships and lives that had been lost, the risks they had taken, and the moments when fear had almost taken hold. Every officer, pilot, engineer, and technician had faced the abyss and had acted with unwavering courage. They had made decisions in seconds that would have consequences for thousands, and through their skill and determination, they had changed the course of history. The weight of this realization was humbling, yet it also filled them with pride. The aftermath of the battle was not just physical but psychological. The crew had witnessed destruction on a scale few humans had ever seen. Alien ships lay scattered, some smoldering, others drifting silently in space. The eerie silence was a stark contrast to the chaos that had dominated the battlefield just hours before. The crew walked through the corridors of the Valiant, tending to minor repairs, checking on systems, and ensuring that the ship remained fully operational. Each person moved with a mixture of exhaustion and quiet triumph, aware that their actions had safeguarded countless lives and had secured a victory that would be remembered for generations. Humanity's triumph extended far beyond the battlefield. News of the victory spread across the colonies and the wider human network. Leaders addressed their people, praising the courage and skill of the Valiant's crew. They described the strategic brilliance and bravery that had led to the defeat of a superior alien force. Citizens who had lived in fear for weeks now experienced a renewed sense of hope. Schools, communication hubs, and public forums filled with discussions about the battle, about humanity's resilience, and about what it meant to survive against such overwhelming odds. The triumph became a moment of collective pride, a story of courage to inspire generations. For the crew of the Valiant, the return journey was also a time for personal reflection. Pilots recalled the maneuvers that had saved lives. Engineers remembered the moments when split-second decisions kept critical systems online, and officers thought of the strategies that had turned the tide of battle. Each individual understood that their role had been crucial. The cohesion and trust that had allowed them to fight as a single, unified force were now celebrated in quiet conversations and shared glances. They realized that their strength came not just from technology or firepower, but from unity, skill, and the belief that humanity could prevail no matter the challenge. As the ship approached friendly territory, celebrations began quietly aboard the Valiant. Crew members shared stories of moments when fear had threatened to paralyze them, and how teamwork and trust had carried them through. They spoke of the exhilaration of precision maneuvers, the adrenaline of dodging enemy fire, and the awe of seeing alien ships falter under their coordinated attacks. The experience had been terrifying, exhausting, and exhilarating all at once. The crew had not only survived, they had demonstrated the very best of humanity under pressure. Upon arrival in human-controlled space, the Valiant was greeted with admiration and respect. Other human ships, civilians, and officials welcomed them as heroes. The journey of the Valiant and her crew became the story of the day, the week, and eventually a tale that would be passed down through generations. Photographs, recordings, and reports documented every moment of the battle, every strategic decision, and every act of bravery. The human race, which had once seemed vulnerable in the vastness of space, now had a tangible example of resilience, courage, and ingenuity to rally around. The triumph of the Valiant had lessons far beyond military strategy. Across human colonies, people reflected on the importance of unity, preparation, and determination. They realized that even when faced with enemies far stronger or more numerous, humanity's strength lay in its ability to adapt, to cooperate, and to act with courage. The crew's victory became a symbol not only of survival but of inspiration. Young people across the colonies looked to the story of the Valiant as proof that human ingenuity and courage could overcome almost any obstacle. While there was pride and celebration, the crew also experienced a deep understanding of responsibility. The battle had shown the importance of vigilance, planning, and readiness. Every crew member carried with them the knowledge that the galaxy was vast and full of unknown dangers. Today's victory did not guarantee tomorrow's safety, but it had proven that humans could face threats intelligently, strategically, and bravely. This understanding reinforced the commitment of the crew and all humanity to remain prepared, to continue advancing their technology, and to ensure that the lessons of this battle would guide future generations. The emotional impact on the crew was profound. Some wept quietly, overwhelmed by relief and the realization of what had been achieved. Others laughed softly, sharing private moments of camaraderie and joy. The shared experience of life and death struggle created bonds that would last a lifetime. Friendships were strengthened, respect deepened, and a collective sense of purpose emerged. They had faced the impossible together, and they had emerged victorious. It was a defining moment in their lives, one that would shape not only their futures but also the story of humanity as a whole. As the crew took stock of the Valiant, they also considered the broader implications of their victory. The alien fleet had been formidable, and yet humanity had overcome it with strategy, teamwork, and courage. This realization inspired confidence across the colonies. People began to plan for rebuilding, for strengthening defenses, and for ensuring that humanity could continue to explore and thrive in space. The Valiant's success was not merely a military victory. It was a turning point in the perception of humanity's place in the galaxy. Humans were no longer seen as minor players. They were recognized as resilient, strategic, and courageous. The victory also had a profound effect on morale. The human colonies, previously living under the shadow of fear, now experienced a renewed sense of hope and purpose. Children asked questions about the battle, eager to learn about the bravery and skill displayed by the crew. Teachers and leaders used the story as a lesson in courage, resilience, and teamwork. Communities came together to celebrate, recognizing that the victory had been achieved not just by the Valiant, but by every human who had contributed to the war effort in some way. The battle had united people across vast distances, reminding them of the strength inherent in cooperation and shared purpose. Despite the triumph, the crew of the Valiant remained humble. They knew that victory had come at a cost, that countless lives had been risked, and that the galaxy still held unknown challenges. Yet they also understood the power of human courage and ingenuity. Every pilot, officer, engineer, and technician had contributed to a moment that would be remembered for generations. Their story became a beacon of hope, an example of what humanity could achieve when united by purpose and driven by determination. In the days following the battle, the crew was recognized and honored, but the recognition was more than ceremonial. It was a celebration of human spirit and perseverance. Awards were given, speeches were made, and records of their bravery were added to historical archives. Yet for the crew, the greatest reward was knowing that they had made a difference, that their actions had saved lives, and that humanity had proven itself capable of triumphing against overwhelming odds. This sense of accomplishment, combined with the lessons learned in battle, would guide them in future missions and in the ongoing effort to secure humanity's place among the stars. The victory of the Valiant became more than just a story of war. It became a story of inspiration. Across human colonies, people recounted the tale of the ship and her crew, highlighting moments of courage, strategy, and unity. Children dreamed of one day joining the ranks of such heroes. Adults reflected on the strength and resilience demonstrated under pressure. Entire communities drew lessons about perseverance, teamwork, and the power of determination. Humanity had faced the darkness and uncertainty of space, had confronted a superior enemy, and had emerged victorious. Finally, the Valiant's crew took a moment to reflect on what the battle had truly meant. They had faced unimaginable danger, tested the limits of their abilities, and worked together in perfect harmony. They had turned fear into action, uncertainty into opportunity, and chaos into triumph. Their victory was not merely a military success, it was a testament to the human spirit. Courage, skill, determination, and unity had prevailed against impossible odds. Humanity had survived, humanity had triumphed, and humanity had proven that even in the darkest moments, it could shine brightly. As the ship moved further into friendly space, the crew allowed themselves small celebrations, smiles, and moments of quiet pride. They knew that their story would be remembered, their courage celebrated, and their actions studied for generations. The Valiant had entered the battlefield, faced overwhelming odds, and emerged victorious. Humanity's triumph was complete, not just in terms of strategy or technology, but in courage, spirit, and the unbreakable will to survive. The story of the Valiant and her crew became a legacy, a reminder that even against the greatest challenges, humanity could rise, endure, and triumph.